As Okarun develops throughout the series, does his insecurity disappear? Or is it still there, stronger than ever? This video is a psychological breakdown of the moment Okarun faced a challenge that should have broken him, but instead turned his insecurity into unstoppable power. In Chapter 8, Season 2, Okarun faces off against the ghosts of great musicians from the past. And the use of classical music in the background is of course fitting, but at the same time incredibly meaningful. The Beethoven's Ninth Symphony is a perfect reflection of Okarun's internal conflict and turning point. It was the first example of a symphony that elevated human voices to equal heights with instruments. The famous Ode to Joy opens with a striking declaration: "Oh friends, not the stones, but let's strike up more agreeable ones, and more joyful." The piece then builds into a celebration of unity, declaring, "All people become brothers," and "Be embraced, millions." Basically, the song is hyping you up in an astronomical proportion. By starting the song with the quote, "Not the stones," the lyricist paints a picture of someone who is cheering up a friend who is down, inviting you to rejoice and find reason to be happy, for the sake of found love, witnessing union, or just by having a soul. By rejecting despair and actively choosing joy, the opening literally tells us to abandon dark feelings and embrace something brighter. And this mirrors Okarun's struggle from solitude and inadequacy to the joy of connections. So when we look at his transformation, it makes me question, is his insecurity a flaw or a virtue? Insecurity, by definition, is fear, especially uncertainty about one's own abilities. Up until this point, Okarun carried two crushing limitations. Physically, he could only access his power twice before exhaustion. Mentally, he felt fundamentally unworthy of connection. The challenge that should have broken him would come in a form of a person who would have tested both limitations, Jin and Joji. Jin triggered a spiral of jealousy that showed Okarun an intimacy that felt impossibly out of reach. For a moment, Okarun considered surrendering his feelings entirely, accepting defeat before the fight even began. But like Beethoven's symphony, Okarun's story is about transformation, his insecurity becoming the very engine that drives him beyond his limits. The confession from a possessed mannequin expressed a philosophy of love rooted in traditional Japanese romance, a kind of all-or-nothing attitude towards passion that obfuscates all sense of fear.
Don't you see? After I met you, everything changed. Before, my world was gray. But thanks to you, I see colors I never imagined!
Okarun witnessed all of this, and that moment made him realize just how precious Momo was to him. In a sense, Taro's confession became Okarun's unspoken words. From that point on, we saw him completely change his attitude towards Gigi, and we begin to expect a confrontation that is common in stories about love triangles. But that's when Dandadan completely subverts our expectation, because Gigi was never a real threat to Okarun's romance.
You're so cool, Okarun. You know everything. I got mad respect for friends like you.
We're friends?
Instead, Okarun starts to empathize with Gigi. Gigi's unexpected warmth catches him off guard, a genuine friendliness that refuses to be dismissed. Then the evil eye strikes. Gigi's possession transforms their dynamic entirely. What began as an emotional turmoil becomes physical danger, and Okarun faces the brutal reality of their power gap. His two-use limitation has never felt more crushing than when staring down a yokai-controlled opponent whose strength dwarfs his own. But in that moment of overwhelming disadvantage, something clicks. The impossibility of the situation doesn't paralyze him. With just the two of them in that underground arena, Okarun finally embraces the all-or-nothing mindset that will define his growth. But that burst still wasn't enough to stop him. From a romantic threat to a life threat, the evil eye directly hurts Momo right in front of Okarun, and he finds himself at the lowest point he's ever been. He experienced all of his fears coming into reality. The thought of losing what's most precious to you because of your inability to protect it. And we've seen in the past how Okarun's insecurity has been overwritten by his protective instincts. Once in his fight against the aliens,
But Miss Ayase, she's the only one who stood up for me!
I won't let anyone hurt her! You hear me?
And in the second time against the school bullies. From his pattern, we know that the trigger for Okarun to turn his insecurity into power is Momo's well-being. So the evil eye here is Okarun's impossible challenge, a physical threat that is both hijacking his friend's agency and the possibility of losing Momo forever. So how did Okarun turn all those negative feelings into power? In between the moment Gigi turns from a love threat to a life threat, Okarun and Momo became closer and closer, with Momo making advances by holding his hand in the car, and Okarun visiting her job and accompanying her home. Okarun most likely realized that his feelings are mutual. This confirmation sets his heart in the right place. No longer controlled by the fear of his inadequacy, his only objective now is to protect Momo. The only limitation left was his power. So when the anime juxtaposes his training with the ode to joy, it paints a complete picture of what's going on inside and outside. The transformation of his insecurity from flaw to virtue. Okarun changed, and his immediate next action shows. The key detail here is how Seiko and Gigi react to his new attitude. Seiko previously expressed how she goes by a rule of minimal intervention.
Us adults, it's our job to shoulder a kid's troubles and tell him, don't worry, do what you want.
She believes the young generation will find their own solutions, consistently giving Momo and Okarun space to resolve their conflicts through their own strength. Her philosophy stems from two core beliefs. Intervention stunts growth, and forced wisdom creates resistance rather than understanding. We see this clearly in how she handled Momo's childhood outburst. Rather than imposing her worldview, Seiko allowed Momo to discover truth through her own journey. The result was genuine understanding that came from within, not compliance born from external pressure. Seiko embodies authentic stoicism. Truth doesn't require force because it will eventually surface naturally. Everyone arrives at understanding at their own pace, and rushing this process only creates distance. These ideals are deeply rooted in Zen Buddhism practice. In Zen, there's the concept of Buddha nature, the inherent potential for enlightenment that exists within every being. These teachings suggest that true wisdom cannot be transmitted through words or intervention alone. It must be awakened from within to direct experience. The Buddha himself taught that each person must walk their own path to liberation. Seiko understands that true growth comes not from being shown the way, but from discovering one's own light in the darkness. That's what makes her reaction so important. When Okarun finally challenges the evil eye, Seiko recognizes he changed, choosing to respect the new truth that emerged from within without her intervention. She essentially says, let him cook. Gigi, on the other hand, is also going through some strong emotions. His empathy is a positive trait, but is ultimately putting the life of his friends in danger. By allowing the evil eye into his body, he destroyed Momo's house and brought suffering to all of his friends. When Okarun pushes him away from Momo, he realizes how much he messed up, and it becomes even worse when they stop talking to each other after that. They are both angry at each other, but in a way that cannot be resolved with words. That's the reason in this moment Gigi trusts Okarun. Just by directing words toward each other, Gigi is reassured that this conflict can be resolved, and that his error can be undone. So really, is Okarun's insecurity a flaw or a virtue? Through insecurity, Okarun pushed himself past his limitations. If he was confident on his abilities from day one, would he become the unstoppable force he is now? The value behind his fear is how it forces him to change, realize his shortcomings and grow. Fear and insecurity actually facilitate his path once he starts listening to his emotions. They tell him exactly what's wrong and what he needs to improve. The trap is feeling that confidence is the final state that only truly capable people find themselves into. Instead, fear and insecurity pushes even the most proficient into even higher levels by challenging their limitations directly. Okarun's growth and development is an excellent portrayal of how skills and emotions are deeply connected. After he overcomes fear, incredible feats becomes almost trivial, showing how the real limitation was really inside his head since the beginning. If you see yourself in Okarun, here's what his journey teaches us. Social anxiety means you care about connection. Imposter syndrome means you have standards. Fear of failure means you are reaching for something meaningful. Your insecurity isn't your enemy. It's information. It's a power waiting to be activated. What makes your protective instincts stronger than your insecurities? Maybe it's your younger sibling, your future self, or a cause you believe in. When you connect with that deeper purpose, your limitations suddenly become negotiable. When something truly matters to you, you'll discover energy and courage you didn't know existed within you. The most confident people don't live without fear. They've learned to run towards what scares them when something important is on the line. Okarun became unstoppable because he took his biggest weakness and instead of letting it become his cage, he turned it into fuel, essentially turning a flaw into a virtue. That's it for this video. Subscribe if you like it, and see you next time.